Somewhere around the year 1800, humanity quietly abandoned a sleep pattern, gas lamps, factory bells, and a night sky that used to actually matter. If you've ever woken up at 3 in the morning, wide awake for no reason, heart doing something weird, mind suddenly loud, why do humans sleep at night instead of day? The easy answer is biology. Our eyes evolved for daylight hunting and gathering, not stalking around in the dark like an owl or a fox. Deep inside your brain, there's a cluster of about 20,000 neurons. Lions can sleep something like 16 to 20 hours a day. Elephants, on the opposite end, often survive on barely 2 hours. Dolphins and several whale species take it even further. Unihemispheric sleep. Certain birds can do a lighter version mid-flight. One particular mammal species deciding sleep has to arrive in one continuous 8-hour block.
And the person who blew this open was a historian, not a sleep scientist. His name is Roger Ekirch, and in the 1990s, he was digging through old court records when he kept running into a phrase that didn't make sense to him at first. First sleep. And then, later in the same documents, second sleep. People went to bed shortly after dusk. Candles were expensive. They'd sleep for 3 or 4 hours. Then they'd wake up. People used it to pray, to think, to talk quietly with a partner. Some medical texts from the period actually recommended this window as a good time for conception. Some people got up and visited neighbors who were also awake. Waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a disorder. It was Tuesday, because this channel doesn't do the thing where we pretend the evidence is cleaner than it actually is. In 2015, a team led by researcher Jerome Siegel at UCLA did something clever. They went and studied 3 groups of modern hunter-gatherers, the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia, communities living without electricity, without artificial light, and they strapped sleep monitors on people and just watched what actually happened. The result surprised almost everyone. No segmented sleep. These groups slept in one largely continuous block. In 2017, David Samson fitted sleep trackers on Hadza hunter-gatherers. Across the whole camp, there was almost never a single moment when every person was fully asleep. Somebody was always at least partially awake, drifting, half listening. A sleeping group is a vulnerable group. Predators, rival bands, fire. That variation has a name too. Chronotype. The tendency some people have to naturally feel sharp at dawn, and others, well after midnight. Put a group of larks and owls together. You get near-continuous, staggered, low-effort coverage. Sleep timing was never just shaped by darkness. It was shaped by climate. In much of the Mediterranean, cultures developed a completely different rhythm. Working through the punishing heat of early afternoon was simply worse. That pattern, the siesta and its many regional cousins, survived industrialization. Meanwhile, populations living near the Arctic Circle developed an entirely different relationship. Months of near-constant summer daylight and months of near-constant winter darkness. Even before a single gas lamp was ever lit, human sleep was never one universal template. It flexed. It responded to climate, to latitude, to how long the nights actually were. Which brings us to the part where humans took whatever flexible sleep pattern they had and forcibly replaced it with one single, standardized, industrial version. Candles, oil lamps, hearth fires, all of it dim, all of it expensive. For most of history, night stayed genuinely dark, and darkness stayed genuinely long. Gas street lighting spread through major European cities in the early 1800s. Shops stayed open later. Streets stayed populated later. Then came electric light. Edison's practical incandescent bulb in 1879. It made staying up cheap. The boundary between day and night. Something you could simply switch off with your hand. And layered right on top, industrial work schedules. Before the factory system, most people's daily rhythm was tied loosely to agricultural work. Factories didn't care about your suprachiasmatic nucleus. Factories cared about shift start times. A single, consolidated block of sleep became the only version compatible. Segmented sleep simply didn't fit the new machine. So within a couple of generations, it essentially vanished from cultural memory. Not because bodies changed, because the world around them did. By the time your great-grandparents were alive, the idea that anyone slept any other way had disappeared. 8 consolidated hours became not just common but assumed, moralized even, and anything else got quietly rebranded as a problem to fix. Shift work, which barely existed before the industrial era, now has a huge share. International travel introduced jet lag, forcing the master clock to sprint through time zone changes it never evolved to handle. A glowing rectangle most people now hold 6 inches from their face after sunset, emitting exactly the wavelength of light most efficient at suppressing melatonin. Edison's light bulb pushed the boundary of day a few hours later. Your phone screen finishes the job Edison started. Which brings us back to you, at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. Your biology absolutely wants you asleep during dark hours. That part is real. Waking at 3 a.m. treated as a red flag worth medicating. That expectation is startlingly recent, deeply cultural. Some ancestral populations very likely broke their night into 2 segments. Others, based on modern observational data, mostly didn't. The rigid, anxious single-block model is largely an industrial invention, propped up by cheap light and factory whistles, not by evolutionary programming. None of this means insomnia isn't real. Chronic sleep disruption genuinely affects health, mood, and cognition. A single ordinary mid-sleep waking treated as catastrophic evidence. For a huge stretch of human history, waking in the dark was simply what a night looked like. So next time it's the middle of the night and you're lying there, maybe it's worth remembering. Somewhere in a farmhouse 300 years ago, someone else was doing exactly the same thing. And nobody in that house thought there was anything wrong with them either. They just called it first sleep, got up, sat with their thoughts by the dying light of a fire, and eventually let the second half of the night take them back. The gas lamps came later, the factory bells came later, the glowing rectangle on your nightstand came later still. The idea that sleep was ever supposed to be a solid, uninterrupted 8 hours, delivered on schedule like a shift change, that came later too. Arrived for reasons that had far more to do with factory output than biology. The dark, quiet middle of the night was there first. It was there for the farmhouses and the hunter-gatherer camps, with someone always half awake, keeping watch, and the cultures that split their day around the heat instead of the dark, and every other locally adapted version of rest our species invented, and then just as quietly forgotten. Night hasn't changed. What changed is what we decided we were allowed to do with it. Re-emphasizing ancestral nocturnal awareness. The simplicity of pre-industrial night. Biological clock rhythm visualization. The rise of early urban nightlife. Shift work contrast. Blue light impact. Reclaiming 3 a.m. peace. Chronotype harmony. Historical document reference. SCN. Neuron cluster. Sunlight calibration. Bunker sleep experiment. Melatonin wave. Animal sleep contrast. Medieval sleep schedule. Midnight chatter. Hadza camp watch. Siesta culture. Industrial whistle alarm, electric light revolution. Factory clock in, modern sleep anxiety. Jet lag time zone shift. Phone addiction late night. Normalizing 3 a.m. wakefulness. The quiet midnight hour. Historical connection. Fireplace warmth. Gas lamp history fading. Factory schedule critique. Phone screen light off. Continuous sleep myth. Nature's original design. Ancient human resilience. Desert heat siesta. Universal human rest. Accepting nighttime. The illusion of brokenness. Night hasn't changed. What changed is what we decided we were allowed to do with it.